Okay. Welcome, one and all, to yet another episode of WIC TV, a cross-ideological space where we come together to talk about issues both political and cultural, from the silly to the serious. And gang, we got a show for you today. Today is going to be all about the state of the race. We're going to be talking about Trump. We're going to be talking about Harris. We're going to be talking even about governor races. There was a bit of a leak today, an expose, if you will, on Mark Robinson, who calls himself a black Nazi. That's the GOP congressional candidate, to be clear, for North Carolina. Governor candidate, I should say. My bad. Yeah, lots to talk about, lots to get into, lots to discuss. But before we do that, there's two things I want to do. One, I want to give a introduction to all the wonderful people who'll be joining me. Tell people who you are, what you do, right? What some of your thoughts on the race are, things like that, and we'll get into it. And the second thing I'd like to do, you guys know I get a check from Progressive Victory. Now, one of the things I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to ask you, dear audience, to join us in phone banking, to sign up for some phone banking. So if you don't just want to talk about this election cycle, right? If you don't want to just hear about it, but you actually want to get your hands dirty, so to speak, get into it. I'm going to provide some links in my chats here. Click on those links, and if you're interested, sign up. It gives you all the information there. It's very cool, right? You don't need any experience, but that's what we're going to do. While I provide those links, let's give the microphone to Portland first, and then we'll just go around the room. Portland, tell people who you are. What are your thoughts on the race? Go ahead.
Hey guys, nice to see those of you that I'm familiar with. Nice to meet those of you that I'm not. I go by Portland is Burning on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. I don't stream very often, but I do like to pop on occasionally for panels to discuss topics I'm interested in. This one definitely I appreciate being invited to because I think the state of the race is a bit of a shit show, and it feels eerily reminiscent of 2016 in that I'm fully expecting to welcome our dear beloved dictator Donald Trump back into the White House in January of 2025. Now, I look forward to talking about the reasons why I think that's going to happen, but believe me, I in no way look forward to it happening. Go Kamala, vote Harris, phone bank with Progressive Victory, and yeah, thank you for joining us. Look forward to chatting.
Oh, well, a doomer already. Thank you for being here. We'll see how it goes. Next up, first time guest on my channel. We'll see how it goes. Pentle, who are you?
Hello.
What do you think?
Hi,
Go ahead.
I'm Pentle. I make content for YouTube and I stream on Twitch. You can find me on X. I think obviously you guys probably guess I am a Trump supporter. So I want him to win, and I think he will win. Just to give my quick thoughts, I think him dropping out of the race was indicative of the fact that the Democrats had already lost the race with him as their candidate. So having him step down and with 3 months to go, I mean, I think you'd be hard pressed to find a good candidate that would want to put their career on the line with 3 months to go, like someone like Gavin Newsom, for example. So I think Kamala stepping in is kind of a last resort, to try to protect the integrity of the party. I don't think that they have any chance of winning. I think they're running from very, very far behind, and I'm already taking victory laps. I'm prepared to hold the biggest L if Trump loses the election. I'm going to be, eating a lot of my words, but that's how I feel about it. I feel optimistic, and I'm excited.
Yeah, we'll get into why as we go, but thank you for being here, and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Next up, no stranger to my show, Fairy Queen. Give us your thoughts. Tell people who you are in case they forgot.
Hi, everybody. My name is Arent Fairy Queen, otherwise known as FQ. You can find me on YouTube at It's Me Fairy Queen, and you can find me on Twitter at It Me Fairy Queen, okay? Minus the S, okay? You can also find me on Twitch at It's Me Fairy Queen too. So hello, you guys you've seen me before. Hello, it's nice to see you all. So I'm not going to talk about who, at first at least, who I think you should vote for. I'm going to talk about who I think will win, okay? And I think that's going to be a thing that is really important to separate at the beginning, okay? There's a difference between who we want to vote for and who we think is likely to win. My current prediction right now, I think that Kamala is likely going to win. And the reason why I think that is it's largely informed by there is a theory about voting. It's called the 13 Keys to the White House. I don't know if any of you guys have ever heard of that before. It's a theory that's proposed by a man named Alan Lichtman. And basically what his theory is that it's a model that uses 13 true or false statements to forecast whether the party currently in the White House will retain power or if it will be defeated. If 6 or more keys are false, the incumbent party is predicted to lose. And currently, his prediction at the moment, based off of these 13 different factors, which we can go into later if you want, predict Kamala Harris as the winner. And it's important to note something, because I'm sure that we'll get into polls. We'll probably talk about like the polls. I'm sure that that's there. But I really want to clarify a major central point of the theory. And that's that polls, pundits, big things that happen doesn't actually have as big of an impact as we think on who actually becomes elected and gets elected into office. It's primarily focuses on things like midterm gains, no primary contest, no third party, how strong is the economy, was there a major policy change, no social unrest, et cetera, et cetera. And we can get into it later, but currently, based off of his analysis and based off of what he's looked at, specifically policy changes from the Biden administration, it seems likely that Kamala Harris will probably win. Currently, for him, according to what he has so far, he's predicted 9 of these keys as being true for Kamala and 4 of them as being false for Kamala. So just on who I think will win, I think that Kamala Harris will win based off of that theory that I mentioned.
Okay.
And we can talk more. I'm not going to say who I want to vote for. We can talk about that later if it becomes relevant. But that's who I think will win.
Okay. Well, thanks for being here. We will get into it as we go. Last but certainly not least, Katyusha. I'm going to mispronounce it. I'm sorry.
You could just say Katya. It's fine.
Katya. Okay. Katya, what do you have for us?
Okay, so I'm Katya. You can find me on Twitter/X at Premier Katya. Basically, my prediction is I can't be so sure. I mean, it looks good for Kamala, but then like the craziest shit happens like the next minute, and I just go, what? And then another thing happens, and I go, oh, never mind. And that's just been like the last since before Biden dropped out. So currently, I don't have too much of a prediction, especially since the polls have been so freaking crazy. I mean, it's looking like I'm looking towards it being Kamala Harris. Like, I'd say that's more likely than not. But, to say it's, anything above 60-40 for me is, probably, it's not, a landslide in either way.
Okay, well, thank you for being here. I guess we'll get into it as we go. I guess the first question I have for you all, and I'm curious everyone's answer here, right? What do you think Kamala needs to do to give herself the best chance of winning? And what do you think Trump needs to do to give himself the best chance of winning? So regardless of what you think should happen, what do you think each candidate should do if they want to win? Let's start with Pentle. Let's just go around the room. I'm just curious.
Well, I think the answer is the same probably for both of them. It's to be as visible as possible, do as many rallies, do as many events, take as many questions as you can. I think it's notable that Trump's doing that. He's doing rallies every day. He's doing multiple events some days. He's taking questions. He went to see the Black Journalists Convention in Chicago and fielded questions there. So I think Kamala needs to step up and probably do more of the same. But I think that it's probably behind the scenes, their teams recognize that Trump's team has seen that every time he makes appearances, it's good. He needs to get out there. The numbers reflect that positively. I don't know that Kamala's team is necessarily that confident that the more she goes out there, that the numbers are always going up. I think that there's some times where she makes some appearances and they're not super confident in her ability. So she hasn't been as visible, I would say. And I think if she wants to maximize her chance of winning this election, she needs to be a lot more visible than she has. Hiding behind a edited 17-minute CNN interview, doing 30-minute, quick talks at the rallies and stuff, but not taking, real serious open questions and stuff like that. I think that's going to harm her and hold her back. But visibility is the answer I would give for both candidates. And that's probably true for every candidate all the time. So
$20 from Artemis Fowl, and I want everyone's opinions on that, right? This is a discussion, right? So it's just open. Feel free to jump in. But Artemis Fowl for $20. Alan Lichtman's 13 Keys is interesting. He has labeled the Biden administration as not having a major scandal. He has a skewed opinion, causing his analysis to be inaccurate. The keys objectively favor Trump right now. Thank you for the $20. But
I
yeah,
would also.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to back that up. That the keys also are marked, I think, true for no third-party challenge or no primary challenge. But RFK intended to run as a Democrat and then pulled a very significant polling numbers when he moved into his third-party role. So I think you can say it wasn't a primary challenge because he didn't actually follow through with the Democratic Party election process. He ended up going to the third party. And there's enough, bad blood between that new party and the Democrats. But I'm not sure that the 13 keys, the way that they've been analyzed this year, has been very accurate. I also think that things like, Donald Trump getting shot at, taking a bullet to the ear, the visual of that assassination attempt, I think that probably should be a 14th key. I mean, that's a pretty impactful event.
Go ahead, Fairy Queen.
So I think my answer to that, I would agree with you if it wasn't for the case, and I do agree, there are even some things that are mentioned here that I have questions about, which is strong short-term economy and long-term and long-term economy. That was something that I raised an eyebrow at, like when I looked at the 13 keys. Like forget about like what the truth of the economy is. The perception that people have, in my personal experience, the perception is that the economy is bad. That's the perception, at least. The perception that I hear, like when I talk to most people, I think Trump said it like what he said when he was in that debate stage was people can't buy bacon or eggs, gas. It's hot. It's lowered, right? It's not nearly as bad as it was, but it's not as good as it's also not as good as it used to be. So there's even some keys that I have questions. But the reason why, even though I don't know that I agree with every single one of these keys, is that he's consistently made a correct prediction since 1984 based off of who the incumbent was. And if I'm going to place my eggs in a basket on a theory or in a system of trying to figure out who the president is, I think trusting, a long span, history since 1984 that consistently predicts the correct person on a pretty objective series of metrics from a professor of history, that seems to me to be probably more reliable, right, than me scanning like tons of polls about like how popular each candidate is. So I know it's not that I don't disagree with you or not that I wouldn't quibble, but I also don't know that I'm in a position maybe to quibble with some of his evaluations.
I want to ask the panel here about something that Pentle said that I have questions on. Right, the Trump assassination attempts. There's two now. Right, there's the one that just occurred. I don't think any shots were actually fired, but the guy was obviously planning to do something, right? And then you have the more talked about one, the more famous, infamous one, if you want to use that word, where the guy, with the fist pump, all that. You saw the visuals, right? That didn't seem to move the polls, however. That didn't seem to actually impact anything. So what metric are we using here to say that
I don't put too much credibility into the polls myself. I've never been polled. I don't know anyone who's ever been polled. I've heard a lot of really sketchy things about the way those polls are done. I've heard that there's like groups that are basically polled over and over. So like some of these 1,000 sample polls are like groups of the same people being polled all the time. So I think polls or whatever. I think a president getting shot and surviving like that, I think it energizes his base, if nothing else. I think even if you don't want to say it picked up any votes, which I think it probably did pick up some swing voters, it certainly got the people that were already going to vote for him very, very passionately excited to vote for him again and to get him back in the White House. And so people on my side of this already, they're more enthusiastic. And so even if you think the polls maybe aren't affected, that enthusiasm within each side is really important. And I'm not sure that Kamala's matching that enthusiasm among her own party. Maybe she is. Maybe you guys are all super excited and you're not just like really anti-Trump and you guys actually really love Kamala and you would have elected her if she went in through a primary. But I don't see it that way. I think you guys kind of got stuck with her. I feel kind of bad. I feel like you guys are victims. It's kind of tragic. But we'll see. I think to answer your question, I think it increased the enthusiasm amongst his base, if nothing else. So that's a very important metric, especially when it comes down to getting people out to vote.
Thoughts on that?
In your statement there, you specifically carved out like, I don't have any analytical evidence at all to suggest that even a single vote was flipped by these assassination attempts, but like the vibe on more enthusiastic among people who were already going to vote for Trump. I don't find that to be a very compelling argument personally. And secondly, the
Well,
reason
you don't
why we
think
would
that
no, I'm not done. I'm not done yet. Hold on. Secondly, I think that like there's a misunderstanding of how polling works here. Obviously, if you're trying to measure changes in voter sentiment over time, you're going to pull largely like the same demographics of people. You're going to try to determine whether or not the same large like opinion or not like looking deliberately to find a different demographic or like pool of people to pull from to to compare with past results, because obviously that's not going to tell you anything about how voter sentiment has changed among those groups that you're particularly trying to measure. So go ahead.
I've talked to people as someone who's super openly Trump. I've had a lot of people hit me up after the assassination attempt, so I know people that are going to vote for Trump now and that were swayed, and perhaps they were going to end up on my side anyway. Maybe that was just the event that did it. But I think as far as the enthusiasm, it's been, there's T-shirts everywhere. It's definitely been a moment that Trump supporters are going to remember as they go in to vote in November.
Sure.
And as far as the thing about polling, there's 130 million votes counted in an election at least, right? And these polls have like 1,000. This is how you end up looking at 99% chance of Hillary winning when the election was being held in 2016, and then you just slowly see that end up. The polls, I just don't give them any credibility. After 2016, I don't know why anyone would, but
polls are sometimes wrong.
I actually do my own.
The thing is just like, we can't say 100% that the methodology they're using is incorrect just because they were incorrect about that prediction. There are a lot of polls now that are faulty, I'm sure. There's a lot of polls all the time that are faulty, but to kind of write off polling is we do it for a reason.
What's interesting, if I brought up a bunch of polls that said Trump was going to win, would you guys be like, oh, now everything's changed? It's just people like polls that show what they like, and people don't like polls that don't show what they like.
I think that polls are okay. So we all remember 2016, right? A lot of people thought that Hillary Clinton was going to win during 2016 because of the polling data at the time. But one of the problems that I think, actually, I don't know if this is true. This is a theory I've heard. I'd be curious to know if anybody actually can prove that this is true. But one of the reasons I think for why it was suggested for why polling was inaccurate during 2016, one of the theories I've heard is that a person from Gallup poll would call these people in their homes, who are you voting for? Or someone would come to them and they would ask, who are you voting for, Trump or Hillary Clinton? And people were embarrassed to say that they were voting for Trump. So they would tell the polling person that they were voting for Clinton. And they would tell, people not in the inner circle that they were voting for Hillary Clinton. But really, once the phone was clicked and hung up, and once they were privately with the people they really trusted, they would say, well, but I'm really voting for Trump. And so I don't know if that's as true necessarily, when we're thinking about this particular election season as it was in 2016. But I only bring that up just to say that there are reasons why people lie when you ask them who they're going to vote for. And in that particular election season, the reason that reason was because nobody seriously thought that Trump was going to win. The Republican Party regarded him as an embarrassment, aside obviously from the electors that voted for him. People were constantly making fun of him, round the clock, on CNN and MSNBC. It's so of course people were likely to lie about it. So I wonder, that's part of the reason I think why I'm not as trusting of polls, because you are taking people's word for it as opposed to looking at vast polling predictions, right? Vast predictions based off of policy changes, how people actually vote and when they do.
So do you think that shy Trump voter is not as
Hold on, just a second, Ben. I was not interjecting there to say polling is super reliable and the reason is X, Y, and Z. I was correcting what I thought was a pretty simple and forgivable misunderstanding about why we would pull the same pool of
yeah.
people multiple times to try and determine like whether there was a sentiment shift among a certain demographic or a certain pool of people. And that seemed to be something that you brought up as a reason that you were a little bit skeptical about polls from like a methodological standpoint. So I actually, I'm fully comfortable saying I don't put a tremendous amount of stock in polls, especially ones that have really like a pretty slim margin of error, but also a really close, really close results. I think right now we're in a space where a lot of the polling that we see is very, very close with a margin of error that allows for either side to say like, oh, well, we probably got just as good a chance as the other side. I think that we're going to see another election similarly to 2016 that like where polls fail to tap into like rural and middle working class America in a way that misses a lot of the support that comes from Trump's base. I fully believe that Trump's analytics don't poll as well as the average political candidate because a lot of his support comes from people that polls don't generally reach.
So one
I
of
mean,
the
I think
I
that a
wanted to
lot of
just-
the time.
just real quick,
Sorry,
let's go Katiusha, then we're gonna go Fairy Queen, then we'll get Pent, and then I have a question. But go ahead, Katiusha first.
I think that there's one big thing about why there was a poll shock in 2016 as well was that Trump did pull a lot of people who had not voted before or had not voted in a really long time. Because generally when we're polling people, we're going to pull people who are going to want to vote. So we're going to pull older people. We're going to generally try to pull obviously across demographics. But if we're going with the most likely voters and we're doing a really widespread poll, like there are certain demographics like older people that are going to be probably a bit more represented because we want to talk to people who are going to actually vote. Now, when it comes to that, this time around, I feel like there won't be as much of a poll shock because, if any, because we kind of know already the types of people who vote for Donald Trump. Like, he's not like, new kid on the block. And people know what Donald Trump is all about. Before, because he was kind of a different type of candidate, and he was like different, new, outsider, the crazy guy. A lot of people who are kind of just disaffected with politics were like, ooh, what about him? But nowadays, I mean, he's been in like the political circle for like 8, 9, 10 years now. Like, we know who he is. We know what he's about.
Fairy Queen.
Yeah, I wanted to answer a question that you asked way earlier, Wick.
Please.
And that question was, what does Kamala and what do Trump have to do in order to help their case? And this is kind of what I think. So first Kamala and then with Trump. I'm not sure if Kamala being so memeable, I'm not sure if that's going to help her or if that's going to hurt her. I think there's a very strong case to be made that it will help her. Like Brat Summer, that was something that like her campaign like endorsed. That seems to be being pretty successful. She kind of like has a similar affect to Trump in the sense that a lot of the gaffes and the clips and like the quotations that have been taken of her that are supposed to make fun of her, that are supposed to show, they're supposed to degrade her, have actually had the opposite effect. They went viral and a lot of people watched them and laughed and it endeared her. So the coconut tree is an example, right? You think you fell out of a coconut tree? You come and are born from the context in which you lived. And everyone laughed and thought that was silly, but you watched her, right? You saw her. It was a memeable. You probably clicked and you liked it and you probably shared it with someone else, which means if someone who doesn't care about Kamala Harris being voted into president, they might vote for her just because she made them laugh, right? So I don't know that she necessarily has to change that or if that should be changed, but that was a note that I thought about when considering Harris. The one thing I will say about Harris that might hurt her, she doesn't behave like the leader of the free world, like when I see her speak. She does not seem to be confident. She seems to lack confidence when she speaks. There are many clips and videos where I've heard her talk where this is a prosecutor, okay? She's an intelligent woman. We know this, okay? You don't get to be vice president of the United States without that being true. However, there have been many clips and there have been many moments, including exactly in the debate, where she lacks confidence, she stammers and stumbles on her words. And so it feels to me a little bit like George Bush. It's not that the president actually is less intelligent, but they are coming across that way, like when they have these gaffes and these moments, these clippable moments. So I think that's pretty much what I would say. And also she probably needs to be hard. Probably she needs to have a better answer for immigration for people who are Republicans and for people that are moderates, because that is something that people are upset and are complaining about. She also needs to find a way, frankly, to find a way to scoop up the people who are extremely pro-Palestine and who are protesting for Palestine, to scoop them and to bring them into the fold. It is bad for the Democrats right now that there is that huge divide. I'm not even talking morally, just politically, it's bad. Because this is causing a huge rifts like amongst liberals, like arguing pro-Zionism versus anti-Zionism. So she needs to find a way to resolve that. For Trump, here are the problems with Trump, okay? I've heard from people that, like, he is, in comparison to other Republican candidates, that he's relatively moderate and he's relatively middle of the road. And when you look at a lot of his policies, that does seem to be true. There does seem to be a lot of truth to the idea that he is the most liberal Republican that's run in a while. However, while that's true, his answer on that debate stage about abortion was just bad. It was very bad. And it's extremely bad considering the fact that young female voters care about abortion to a degree that dwarfs almost any other thing that they care about. And so for his response to, would you sign a national abortion ban, for him to skate around the issue and to say, you know, and to mention, well, J.D. Vance didn't exactly talk to them, to be fair, and to sort of slip around that, that was a very, very bad look. And I don't care if the truth is that he really does support IVF treatment. And I think that part that Harris said was a lie. I do think that he supports IVF treatment. But he lied too. It's not legal in any 50 state to execute a baby after they're born.
I guess there
were lots of things like that.
Yeah, the question is, how much will those kinds of statements matter? Does anyone care? That's
abortion. People care about. People very much care about it. Women care about abortion. Yes, and this isn't just a gaffe thing. He said something kind of funny or offensive. That's not the point. The point is that I think, at least for me, and I think a lot of other female voters that watched that debate, we cared about what his answer was to that question. And he needed to say a very clear yes or no to that question. And I did not hear that from him. I heard a lot of conversation about leaving it up to the states. I heard all this stuff, right?
Mm-hmm. And that it'll never happen. The federal, bill it'll never pass my desk. Oh, this will never happen. But that's not yes or no.
Yeah, you don't need to worry about it because it's in the hand of the states, right? Like, that was such a snaky, walk around. I walked into that debate genuinely
if it's
curious.
Passed by Congress, I mean, that kind of suggests that the people in the country went through the legislative process to do it. I mean, he can say he wouldn't sign it. I wouldn't. I would like him to personally. I don't think he will. I think he said at his rallies. I watch him all the time. As far as I understand, he won't sign a national abortion ban. I think he's weak on abortion. But
I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you that he doesn't have nearly as pro anti-choice stance as some other Republicans. That's definitely true. And I also think that he personally, individually, probably supports it. I mean, let's face it, he probably has had tons of mistresses who has had tons of abortions at this point, right? I'm sure that's true for him personally, right? But the question isn't who he is personally, and the question isn't does he particularly care about abortion as a policy issue. The question is, if that piece of paper comes on his desk, is he signing on the dotted line or is he not? And if he can't give a direct answer to that, it's too big of an issue for me to give for him.
Well, I mean, we're talking about a world. We're talking about a world where this has gone through the legislative process, through the House and through the Senate. I mean, I understand the president has veto power, but I could understand in some ways where it's look, I took no position on this. He said he wants the states to decide. If despite that they still bring this bill to him, and that's the legislative branch doing it. I think he does have the right to make either decision. The legislature's done that. I think him saying that he won't sign it and trying to not encourage it as legislation, I don't think that we will see a national abortion ban brought forward by the Republicans without his endorsement of it.
That's
without his endorsement of it, but
because, like you said, it doesn't necessarily perform good with the voters. So it would be if you're going to present it and it's not even going to pass, you wouldn't want to do it. I just,
Sure, I understand.
Hold on. Before we got too far away from
just real quick, just to kind of keep us from talking past each other here, right? We understand that it might not matter, or it might very much matter to the people here. But the question for today is, does this affect the outcome of the vote in November? So what does the general public think? So Fairy Queen has, I think, made a fairly cohesive argument on why she feels that this will matter to at least some subset of the American voter, mainly the woman vote, right? So, like, do you not think? What about that argument? Do you not find compelling?
I wouldn't necessarily. I would say that it's probably two distinct groups: single issue abortion voters, right? Voters that are single issue on abortion, and like swing voters are probably not like a huge overlap there. Like there's like if you're a single issue voter on abortion, you're voting for Kamala. I don't. It's not a surprise to me. You know what I mean? Like that's. Yeah, I don't think you're undecided. You know what I mean?
Definition swingable. Single issue voters are like by definition swingable. It's all about whose platform.
Well, not if one promises like a national, enshrinement of abortion rights, and the other one's, potentially promising a federal ban. I mean, if you're a single issue voter on it I don't think there's a ton of single issue voters on the other side of it. I guess what you're saying, the pro-life, I think that those people can kind of fall on both sides of the political aisle. But pro-choice people are almost exclusively, I would say, voting Democrat.
Right.
I don't think that's a shock.
I think that one
are almost exclusively voting Republican. It's fascinating that you would say that you think that pro-life people who obviously have like a stronger moral conviction and like base principles from which that belief emanates. Like you think that those people would be more fickle about who they're aligned with politically. The people who are
no, I just mean like. I just mean there's people that are pro-life that are like, not on anything. They're especially religious folk that are pro-life, but don't really align with Trump or MAGA on anything else, and they support Kamala. And they might not be super passionate about abortion, but they still are on that side. Those voters certainly exist. I mean, a lot of this country is religious, and a lot of people do hold those values, even though it doesn't necessarily lock them into MAGA. But I would say if I met somebody whose single issue in the election is access to abortion, I would put all of my money on them voting for Kamala this time around. That's just my thing. By the way, I'm going to go to the bathroom when I step out. So I'm not running away. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. You can go to the potty. It's fine. I know Kata is
now that he's gone. Fuck that guy. Am I right? Everybody tired of that guy already?
Katya has been trying to get in, so I'm going to pass it to Katya for a little bit, and then Fairy Queen, I know you want to get in too. Go ahead.
So what I was trying to say in response to, now that we're bringing up abortion, we're bringing up all this stuff, one thing that I feel like is probably, I mean, it's nothing that he can do differently because we're already locked in, but one thing I feel like might really drop some people or make some people a bit apprehensive about Trump would be his questionable at best, atrocious at worst, VP pick. Because every day that he says something and he's like, oh, don't worry, it's just fine, I'm not going to support the abortion ban, or, oh, I'm pretty chill on this. You get JD Vance come on and say like, oh, no, actually, we're gung-ho. And then saying crazy shit like about the eating cats and dogs, doubling down, tripling down on crazy shit. Like, he just comes out with it, even in contradiction to Trump. So they're kind of not in lockstep right now because Vance is trying to go for the more like right-wing, like ultra-right Christian crazy ones over on that side who are, believing things like, like the childless women stuff, like the divorce stuff, like the abortion stuff to that degree. And then Trump's trying to like assuage the people's fears towards the middle. And it's just like, what's even happening? What's going to happen? Don't know. Because if Trump dies, he's like 200 years old, then Vance is going to be in it. And I know there's people who are towards the middle who are about like kind of a bit concerned about that.
Hold on, if I may.
I find it fascinating. Go ahead, Wick.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. Then we'll pass it to you. I'm curious what you find fascinating. But that whole Trump saying one thing and JD Vance saying another, don't you think that may be part of a purposeful strategy, kind of like a plausible deniability for both sides of these things, where one side, because in a general election, you have to appeal to as wide an audience as possible. So if Trump says, no, I'm not really cool with the abortion stuff, right, or the abortion bans and stuff, you can have the more hardline pro-lifers say, well, actually, J.D. Vance is telling you what's actually happening here. We can point to J.D. Vance's words and say, actually, you know what? You don't have to worry about Trump. He's just trying to appeal to the general electorate, right? J.D. Vance has got you. and vice versa, right? People who are like, I like Trump's foreign policy, I like his ideas on tax cuts and stuff, but his abortion stuff with the Republicans, yeesh, I don't like that, right? You can have people like, oh, that's just his crazy vice president. Don't worry about it. Trump's the one who's actually in charge. So don't you think that's kind of like a strategy that they're using?
I think it's a strategy. I think it might work on some people, but it might honestly get some people a bit nervous, especially when you factor in the fact that the vice president becomes president. If the president is dead or unable to, perform his job. And right now, if we're going to bet on something like natural causes happening to either one of those, I'm going to go for the one who's almost 80 and not JD Vance. So, people are really thinking about that too. Clearly, he's the one who's younger, who's a bit more spry, and he's the one who's saying the crazy crap that they might not agree with.
Okay. I know you wanted to interject, Portland, and then we're going to Perry Queen.
Wick, you kind of took the words out of my mouth, and that I was going to basically gesture to the same thing. Like, I look at it as not as a weakness or inconsistency of the platform, but more like a strategy that allows them to have their cake and eat it too. Vance is well known to be connected to like the far right religious side of the, of the Republican base, and Trump had, he picked Mike Pence last time around to curry favor with the exact same crowd. It's not that Trump is unable to tap into that crowd. It's simply that there are some parts of that agenda that come off as pretty radical, and positioning someone as a mouthpiece to kind of that appeals to, while still being able to maintain his more moderate approach to the politics in his, within his rhetoric, kind of plays to the have your cake and eat it too mentality, to being able to court both of those constituencies at the same time without ever really losing anything from either group. So that's all I was going to say.
Very Queen.
Yeah.
So I was going to say something about the single issue voting, and specifically how it affects women, and why I think that's not just something to sort of brush away, well, you're just a single issue voter. And there are a couple of reasons for that. The first one is that when we're just looking at the split of gender between who is more likely to go to the voting booth in the first place, women are more likely to vote than men. And that's not just this past election season. It's not just the past 10 or 20 years. That has consistently been the case for decades now. It's not even controversial to say women are more likely to show up there in the first place. And again, I cannot prove this, but my sense on why that is, why I think that's likely to be the case, is that women are more likely to have kids, they're more likely to be married, which means they are more likely to care about issues that involve things like public schools, that involve community safety. These are issues that women are more likely to rely on welfare, where they're more likely to rely on community resources. And so it would make sense why you would wind up going to the voting booth, why you're more likely to go there. It's because you require resources from the state in order to sustain yourself and in order to sustain your family. So simply saying that this is a single voter issue, I don't think that this is enough to... That's the first reason why I think it matters, okay? Matters to a lot of women. It clearly matters in, when we're polling, when we're looking at, what it is that women care about. This is very clearly one of...
Thank you for the $2.
One of the biggest things, if not the biggest thing. Number one. Number two, we have to look at the last election, okay? Not this election we're in right now, but the previous one. A big reason why Biden won that election was because a lot of Republican women defected from the GOP and chose to vote for Biden instead of Trump. Now, it is true that overall, most white Republican women voted Trump. But nationally, this is a quote from The Atlantic, we haven't seen this amount of defection from the Republican Party in another 20 or 30 years. And that's from Christopher Weber, a professor at the University of Arizona School of Government and Public Policy. And one of the reasons that this article gives for why it was the case, one, for the obvious reasons that everyone can probably think, because a lot of Republican women were embarrassed or they were insulted by a lot of Trump's rhetoric and a lot of his language. That was a big reason why. But there was another reason why, more fundamental reason why, which is that while it's true that Republican women do care about low taxes, limited government, free trade, the responsibility of individuals, they also are more likely to care about communities being safe. They are more likely to be plugged in to their communities as opposed to an average single man.
So how does that? So out on that, if I may, and thank you for the $2, Adarius, and thank you for the tier 1 sub, Ryzen again. Really appreciate you. But this seems to be, I guess my question is, on balance, which wins? Because law and order, immigration as topics, right? Safety, community safety, seem to suggest that women would vote more right, or at least married women, etc., would vote more for the right-leaning candidate. But abortion, right, especially with the loss of Roe v. Wade, seems to suggest that they might vote for more Kamala.
Well,
how does this work out in your mind? Like, where do you think people fall?
Well, so this is precisely what I was getting at, like what happened with the last election season that catapulted Biden in. While it's true that Republican women do care about all of these things, they also care about having affordable health care. They care about having a humane immigration system. That doesn't mean that they believe in sanctuary cities, and that doesn't mean that they are it doesn't mean that they aren't critical of immigration in the same way as Republican men, but they are less likely to support extreme measures on immigration in comparison to Republican men. And most of all, they felt that Trump's biggest failure was his administration's handling of the coronavirus. The fact that he refused to encourage mask wearing, his blasé attitude towards the crisis. And I mention all of these things, right? The women vote matters to get, okay? And it's simply the case that conservative women also care about the issues of abortion, okay? It's true that conservative women that are likely to vote Republican, even if they actually say that they are pro-life, what that actually means is, I personally don't want to have an abortion and don't think I could have one. But then you find out afterwards, they say, but I still think that people should have access to it in the cases of rape, of incest, in certain situations, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not really true that so you could very reasonably talk to somebody who says that they're pro-life, but it doesn't necessarily mean what you think it means. And likewise, you could be talking to somebody that's pro-choice, and them saying that does not necessarily mean what you think it means. Like, you have to ask people what they mean after they say that. And I think a lot of conservative women, even if they say that they're pro-life, and even if they say that they're anti-abortion, what they mean is, I personally think it's murder, but that doesn't mean I think you shouldn't have the ability to do it in some circumstances.
I'll just ask Pentle directly. Why do you not? Because you mentioned coming in that you thought that Trump had this in the bag, pretty much, right? Is that
Yeah.
So, given that information, right, and assuming Fairy Queen's correct, unless you disagree with her premise here, right? What do you think is going to overcome those obstacles for Trump, right?
I mean, on the abortion issue,
well,
I think what we see is him compensating for it. I mean, he's obviously trying to take a fairly, favorable position to the left. You don't see Kamala pulling back. She wants to enshrine it nationally as, an abortion right. I certainly disagree with that. But it's noticeable that she's not really pulling back from it, and Trump is the one who's kind of coming towards the middle on the issue. So I think that's what we see. I mean, he must see the numbers. Abortion is obviously, there's more of you guys than there are of me out there, I guess. So that's just the way it is. And I think there's probably issues where, like on guns, for example, she's had to kind of play back her, toward the center. So on different issues, they're playing and compensating for what feedback they get. And I think Trump is compensating for that. I think that's why he's, considered fairly weak on abortion. If you talk to, someone who's maybe a big Trump supporter, but then you talk to someone else and, he's going to enshrine a federal abortion ban. And it's like, he's playing to the middle for sure. It's an election strategy. I don't think I would deny that.
And you think it's working?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's working as intended. I don't think he's going to, win over the people who really care about abortion. But I think that if, there's, like you are describing, those people that are kind of like, abortion's not really the biggest issue. I might have some views on it, but it's like there's a lot of other things in play. That kind of position to say, look, I let the states decide or whatever, allows that voter to kind of just disregard it, right? So like that's sort of his play is like, hey, don't worry about abortion. Don't think about abortion. Like I represent all these other things that we're not even going to worry about. We're not even talking about it. That's like kind of what he's doing. So,
I think just to respond. Yeah, I think I'll just respond very, very simply to that. I think what I'm trying to say very concisely is, I think for this particular election season, this might not have been true in previous election seasons. It might not be true for future election seasons. I think you're going to find a lot of women are going to be single issue voters, more so probably for this particular election season than in previous election seasons. And it's specifically, I think, going to be about abortion. I think that issue is going to be enough. It's going to loom large enough in the heads of a lot of young female voters that even if they say that they're conservative, and even if they say that they're pro-life, I think that they are vastly more likely to vote for Kamala, or I'm not sure if it's Kamala or Kamala, simply because of the fact that she will be in defense of people's right to have an abortion.
Okay.
And I think that is,
Yeah, $20 from Artemis Fowl. Thank you for the $20. As close as 2020 election was, and it was crazy close, by what metric can you point to that shows Kamala doing as good or better than Biden overall? Almost every key coalition group of Dems have shifted toward Trump slightly. So this is for the people who think Kamala's got it in the bag. Okay, what metrics are we using? Because we have seen, and Artemis Fowl isn't wrong, that a lot of key coalition groups demographically have shifted right. Even minorities have shifted right in a little bit, right? How do we square these circles?
As far as what you said, I think that wait, did you ask why one side has shifted right on something and
No,
then the other one
I'm
is
asking,
I'm
like,
confused.
if that's true, right? And the data suggests that at least in many cases it is. Like, Trump got more minority voters than any other Republican candidate, and polling seems to suggest that he's on track to beat that record, right? How is Democrats going to make up those votes is the question.
I think they've already kind of made up those votes a lot with even like some Republicans or non-voters who are really concerned about, stuff that's going on with Trump and just kind of him in general, especially after January 6th. There's a lot of people who are really just getting the willies about Trump right now, especially after that.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Just for everyone's in my audience's edification, there is a poll done recently, and this was released in July 2024 in cooperation with YouGov polling, that shows the most important issues for voters in the United States as of July. So I'm going to read off these, and I just want a real quick lightning round. Who do you think wins this with the American public? Who is stronger on each of these subjects? We ready for this, gang? We all paying attention? We ready to go?
Sure.
Inflation.
Trump.
Kamala right now, because
Yeah.
it seems like people trust the Democrats more at the moment, according to polling.
Sure. Okay, we're lightning round. We're going lightning round, so just Trump or Kamala is good for now, and we can discuss it afterwards. What do you think, Portland? I didn't hear yours.
Trump,
Okay.
unfortunately.
Fair enough. Immigration.
Trump.
Trump.
Probably
It's
Trump.
Trump again.
Healthcare.
Trump.
Kamala.
God, how can
Kamala.
you fucking say anybody? Kamala, I guess.
Okay.
Kamala.
Jobs and the economy in general.
Trump.
Probably Trump, unfortunately.
Oh,
Many
baby.
people's memories of COVID have faded and their entitlement has returned. So
Mhm.
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, my impulse is to say Trump, but I don't know. Like, regardless of what his policies actually are, like the perception of what the policy is matters too. And I think that walking away from that debate, I remember having a much clearer idea of what Kamala's plans for the economy was going to be, as opposed to Trump. I remember Trump talking a whole lot about immigration over and over again, and I remember him saying that the economy was bad. I do not recall if he mentioned his plans for the economy, and if he mentioned his plans on how to stimulate economic growth, it didn't stick out in my mind. So I don't know. Yeah, I'm not really sure.
The next one is abortion.
Kamala.
Kamala.
Yeah, Kamala.
I guess Kamala. Yeah.
Okay, that was like pulling teeth, Pentle.
fucking
It was
give me
pulling
that.
teeth.
Well, it's just because, like,
But we
for
got
me, obviously, it's
Sure,
Trump,
we're
but,
talking
like,
about
we're
the
trying
American
to put this
public.
as nationally, right?
Yeah, this is the American
Kamala's
public.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Climate and the environment.
Trump.
I don't think anybody really gives a shit, but Kamala.
No, This
Kamala.
is issue
Kamala.
number 6. It's in the top 10.
Kamala.
There's 2 more. that we're going to go to, because then it drops below the 5% mark, and I don't care about the onesies and twosies. So the last two I'm going to read out are civil rights.
Kamala.
Trump.
Kamala.
Do you okay?
We're
The
not
American
asking for
hold
you.
on,
Yeah.
Pentle.
I mean,
You really
it's-
think that
you're-
when people go to the voting booth and they're thinking in civil rights is their issue?
Are you talking about your
they're-
First Amendment, your Second Amendment rights? Like you're talking
Okay.
about, those rights. Are you
Okay.
talking about like race stuff? Then if you're looking at things through the lens of race already, you're probably not voting for Trump.
Sure enough.
So the Second Amendment's generally not considered a like civil right. Like
Guns
when people
is
talk
a
about
different
civil
thing.
rights,
Guns
that's
is a
not
totally
what they're
not.
generally talking about.
category.
Generally, when they say
So what's
guns,
an
the
example
Second
of a
Amendment
civil
goes
right
over there.
then? What's an
A
example of like a
civil
civil
right,
right that you would be voting
equal
on?
protection under the law. That's a
Is that on
civil
the
right.
ballot? Do you think voters are considering that on the ballot this year?
Yes, they
civil
are.
rights?
Hang on.
actually are, yeah.
Whoa. Yeah, hang on. Whoa. Time out. Did you
What?
just see there was a recent movie that was released by Matt Walsh, like called "Am I Racist"? Did you see that movie?
I haven't.
Thankfully
Well,
not.
But I've seen the movie, and a big part of that movie,
good?
honestly, is talking about is about DEI. And I know from speaking to a lot of conservatives that DEI is something. It is a thing that conservatives say over and over and over again. Okay, like this idea that people like the idea
it's
that
not
race.
just a thing we say. There is like a literal department where I work for that. So-
Right,
for
but my
them.
point, but the point is,
It's very
right?
real.
Yeah,
didn't
but
make
the
it
point
up.
is, right? Yeah, but the point is that like
The way
when
they use it is
he-
kind of made up.
the way that what Wick is asking when he says civil rights, like I think what he's referring to is that, and I don't think that like for people who it depends on
Well,
your
then sure,
perspectives. Yeah, that it's Kamala, right? Unless
Right,
you're
but
going to
that's not
explain
really,
to
like,
me.
civil rights. I mean, like,
Do
you're
you
talking
do you
about,
think is the Second Amendment is like your right to own a gun, is that covered underneath the Civil Rights Act? Like that's what we're talking
I'm just
about,
saying
right?
those are rights that I would argue
Are
are
they
on
civil
the
rights?
ballot when you have.
Yeah, but are they civil
I
rights?
don't know what you would
Are they-
consider civil rights.
I think that most
Civil
people, when
Rights
they hear the
Act?
word civil rights,
You think
yeah,
that-
they're referring to rights that come from the Civil Rights Act. That's what they're referring to. That's
Do you
what most
think-
people will talk
Do you
about.
think that like the Second Amendment's on the ballot when one of the candidates wants to enforce like magazine restrictions and ban rifles?
I think that most normal people that are Americans understand that when you say civil rights, it echoes back to the Civil Rights Act, and you're referring to legislation underneath that. That's what most people mean.
Sure.
And if you're trying to
So-
quibble with me about the Second Amendment isn't right, it's more of a rhetorical
We're
point
saying
than
we're
an
talking about
intellectual one,
rights
right?
and stuff like that. I don't
Civil
know what
rights.
civil
Right, the
rights are on the
colloquial
ballot.
definition. The colloquial
my God.
definition of civil rights
True.
is that they guarantee equal social opportunities and equal protection under the law, usually regardless of personal characteristics. Not so much like
So much for
amendments.
the lightning round, but fair enough. We got caught up on the definition of civil rights. I'm here for it. Last one, promise. National security.
Trump. I mean, that's the
Kamala.
same as like immigration as well, the border. That's national security, probably the biggest part of it.
There are other countries in the world, a lot of which there's a lot of stuff going on with.
There's
Okay, we got one
and,
Trump, we got one Kamala, and
and
two
they have
no
access to our
answers.
borders.
I want to hear the no answers. So Portland, national security. Who gets it?
I suppose Trump does, unfortunately.
Fairy Queen. Who gets it?
I'm
don't
not
know
really
is fair.
sure.
If you say
I
I
don't
don't
know.
know, that's a fair answer.
I don't know. If
Yeah.
you had to, I don't know. That's my real answer.
Okay.
I don't know.
$20 from Artemis Fowl. Thank you for the $20. I think my issue is likely going to be is that I can point to a wide range of data showing that Kamala is falling behind significantly compared to Biden 2020, and hearing they have made up the deficit from panelists. How? Thank you for the $20.
They have made up the deficit in polling. I think I'll just return to like what I said at the very beginning, right? That my prediction is not. I don't know what aside from like what it is that voters care about. I don't know what the polls say as to like who is more likely to win as opposed to Trump. My analysis is based off of the 13 keys. It's based off of policy changes that have been made and what this professor has predicted. That's why I say it. So if you're going to point to the polls and say that, well, but look at all this polling data, I've already sort of hand waved that away, right? It might be interesting to take a temperature check, but it's not historically predictive of who wins.
Just for my audience's edification, the polling aggregate prediction sites, 538, Nate Silver's one that he's got going on, RCP, they all show a toss-up, a coin toss, basically. It's as close as it's gonna get. That's what the polling shows.
Well, that's scary if that shy Trump voter is still around that we were talking about earlier. But I have something that might be interesting to kind of like, it's on topic still. So as a Trump voter who voted for him in 2016 and in 2020, obviously he won in 2016 and lost in 2020. And you could chalk that up to, a worse outcome in 2020. But if you look at the numbers, Trump got 64 million votes in 2016, and then he got 75 million in 2020. So he still gained, right? So he's still trending as improving and growing his base, and that's pretty a dramatic jump. That's why he always says he got the most votes of an incumbent president, and just ignoring Biden's 81. But do you guys think that Trump will underperform his 2020 totals? Do you think that he's finally seeing that downturn? And that's the only way I think you could justify seeing Kamala as winning, where you think that anyone could defeat Trump because he's on that downturn. But I think she's still racing to catch up. I think he's absolutely going to add on his 2020 numbers. And the Democrats are going to be looking to also keep and add on their side. And if we're looking at hemorrhaging on their side, like you mentioned, Wick, I'm curious how you guys think they'll make up for it.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that the question becomes, what do you think turnout's going to be? Do you think a lot of people are going to turn out to this election? And I think that
more or less turnout than 2020.
You think
I think probably
more.
less.
Absolutely no way. There is absolutely no scenario where more people vote in 2024 than voted in 2020. We had unprecedented levels of expanded access because of the pandemic in 2020, largely attributable to that giant spike in voter turnout that was larger than any year, like election cycle over election cycle difference in modern history. The overall number, the overall level of participation is definitely going to go down this year. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind.
And so do you think that's going to be applied like overall total votes, or do you think that Trump will also see, like both sides are going to see a decrease in their totals is what you're saying? Because I would say that I think Trump's going to overperform his 2020 total vote numbers. I don't know that Kamala is going to get to 81
I don't know how that
like
would
Joe
happen.
Biden did.
It's almost impossible. The level of access that people enjoyed to the polls in 2020 is not the case in 2024. We did not have an
Was this because of mail-in ballots?
No. Yeah, because of the expanded access via mail-in ballots, via early voting, we had a level of accessibility to the 2020 election that we don't have in 2024, that we didn't have in 2016. It's almost entirely the reason for the difference in the overall turnout that we saw in 2020, and we don't have that situation, like we don't have anything analogous to that situation in 2024.
I don't know if that's true. I'm going to jump in here a minute. So, I think that I'm expecting a similar turnout. I don't know if it's going to be a lot more or anything like that, but I think that a similar turnout is going to happen in 2024 than we see in 2020. I think that the big issues of the day that are on the ballot are going to drive turnout, okay? I think that Trump, for better or worse, will drive turnout, both for him and against him. So while, yes, there is a very big possibility that Trump might outperform his 2020 numbers, it's also possible that he will outperform the people voting against him for his 2020 numbers. Because I think that one of the big things, at least for my Republican friends that I've talked to, one of the big things that makes them hesitant to vote for Trump, some are doing it anyway, right, to be clear, but many of them view the January 6th stuff as a real big issue. I've talked to former Republican congressmen who said they are just not going to be able to vote for Trump. Dick Cheney, for example, endorsed Kamala this time around because of this. And you have Mike Pence.
Unlike the man in politics.
But this is a thing, right? So you have
Fuck
Trump
Dick
driving
Cheney.
turnout both for and against him.
You guys can have him. I'm happy to pass Dick Cheney over to you guys.
Yeah, but does that not indicate like a pattern.
It indicates nothing to me. Dick Cheney is never someone I would have claimed. Just personally, it's
Sure. Other thoughts?
Basically, yeah. I mean, I would agree with you completely on that. There does seem to be quite a decent amount of people who see January 6th as a deal breaker, especially the more we learn about January 6th and the more the public is exposed to knowledge about January 6th, what happened, the court cases, the electors, more than just the riot. Because, I mean, riots happen all the time. The more that people go, wait a minute, hold on. I don't know about this one. Because he's already, kind of hinted at doing that again, pick JD Vance, because he would have done what Mike Pence did not do, and that's a little bit scary to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think
I think the language around January 6th is kind of offensive, to be honest. And I'll ask it this way. I want to ask you guys this question. It's a thought experiment. It might be dumb, but let me ask you this.
No, hold up. How is it offensive?
January 6th? Would you rather live through another January 6th for the rest of your life, every election, or live through one more school shooting in this country? And I want you to think before you answer. Would you rather see another January 6th every election, or one more school shooting?
What? Obviously, one more school shooting.
Really?
I would do one more school shooting than one more January 6th. Fuck yeah! Have you heard me argue on the Second Amendment non-school shootings?
The only person who died on January 6th was Ashley Babbitt. She shouldn't have been shot by the police. They love to lie about the cops that died later. No, they didn't die that day.
We're talking about the damage to our institution.
Brian Sicknick did not die that day.
That's great. That's great.
Okay.
He had medical issues. He didn't die from January 6th.
You can die from something the next day that happened the day before.
Fairy Queen, go ahead.
Oh, fuck.
Okay.
Please don't do this to me.
So there are a couple of things.
You'd rather another school shooting happen than people go walk in the Capitol. Like,
all due respect, Pentle,
if we're talking about fake electors as well,
completely nonsense.
Come on, guys. All right,
Pentle, do you know what happened?
I live in Maryland. I know so many people that went down to DC on January 6th. Not one of them had any fucking idea that all that shit was going to happen.
When I said January 6th, I was also including the fake electors and institutions.
Okay, you'd rather a school shooting than someone try to submit fake electors? Are you kidding?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
that's
Fairy
Queen.
Fairy Queen.
Holy shit.
Fairy Queen.
So a couple of things.
Crazy.
So first of all, regardless of whether you
stop.
think
Everyone but Fairy Queen, stop. Fairy Queen has the floor, and then I got super chats, and then we're going to go to Portland. That's order we're going to go in. Fairy Queen, finish.
So a couple of things. So first of all, regardless of whether or not you think people should care or whether or not you think it's reasonable for people to care about January 6th, the fact that you can't argue with is that people do, in fact, care. A lot of people care. A lot of Republicans care. A lot of voters care. People who are in the middle that will swing the vote care. And this is on top of the abortion question, on top of everything else we could mention here that we've talked about tonight. These are, and I understand that like a lot of conservatives and a lot of Republicans do not take a January 6th. We can have a whole conversation about whether or not you think it was an insurrection, all this stuff. But regardless of whether you think it was an insurrection or not, the fact of the matter is a lot of people believe that it was. And even if they don't think and weren't convinced that it was an insurrection, they were still adamantly disgusted at the idea of a huge swath of voters storming into the Capitol building, spray painting themselves, wearing costumes, defacing like the signature of our Capitol building. That is a big deal. And a lot of Republicans, especially old-time GOP people, they do care about it. Whether or not you think it's smart for them to care about it, that's on you. But what you can't argue with the fact is that they do care about it. And the fact that they care about it bodes badly for Trump. It means that Trump is going to, because the question is going to be, right, if Trump, if he wins the election, right, if he wins this election, if he wins the nomination and he becomes the next president, what's going to happen when he leaves office at the end of his 4 years? Is he going to, is something going to happen again like January 6th?
Well, how could it?
If Kamala wins, is something going to happen again?
Donald Trump isn't eligible for election after 2028. He's not eligible to run that election.
He's not, but
if you want an answer to what
win
he
in
would
2020
do, what did he do in 2020? In 2020, he fully believed, and still to this day, fully believes that the election.
That he did
Hang
not.
on, let me speak. No, hold on. To this day, he still believes that he was the rightful winner of that election. And we saw the next president inaugurated on January 20th. If he was going to do what your like fanfic says he was going to do, that was the time he would have done it. He's not going to wait for the opportunity to maybe get back in the White House.
Do you
and
not
then
know what the plan was on
dictator.
January? Do you not know what the plan was for the certification of the vote?
Okay, hold on. January 6th is where they certify the electors. Okay, we wanted the slates to be reinvested. We wanted to be relitigated. We wanted it to go in court. That's all we wanted.
What about the 60 cases? Was that not enough?
Not when they're all dismissed on standing. We don't get to look at the
evidence.
They were
not all dismissed on standing. A lot were dismissed on evidentiary grounds. And do you even know what standing is?
Yes.
How are we having this conversation?
Are you?
What is standing?
Over 30 of the cases were dismissed on evidentiary reasons and not standing. How are we having this conversation when you have such a surface level understanding of what actually happened, the investigatory process that followed, the adjudication that happened prior to it? I'm not going to waste my time talking to someone about this that is not even equipped to have that conversation to a different topic. Otherwise, we're going to be here all day debunking really, really basic talking points that we've heard 1,000 times already. Jesus Christ, let's just move to a different topic.
Right. Plus, bless your heart, Pentle, but you are like the most ideologically captured dude I've ever seen. We've got Trump flags. We've got Trump jerseys.
Let kids die to avoid another January.
To avoid potentially losing our institution of democracy that we've had for 250 years. Yes.
Wait.
Yeah, you've been propagandized.
Pentle, can I just? Okay,
we're not going to have this conversation.
Wait. Pentle. Okay. Put your personal feelings about whether or not you think it was an insurrection, whether or not you think it has any merit. Put that on the shelf for a minute, okay? Personal feelings aside, do you think it will matter? Not should it matter. Do you think it will matter? You don't think it will matter. Why?
I just don't think people care. I think this is like a battering ram that Democrats love to use, and people are sick and tired of it. I don't think it works. I think that they're probably already letting it go. I think they thought they were going to run on this a lot longer than they are. But no, I don't think it'll matter.
Okay. Even though,
also want to ask you guys, what do you think would have happened if Trump had tweeted something like, "We need to seize the Capitol. We're taking our country back. Like, charge! Like, guys, like we're doing it. It's time. It's the insurrection time." Like, what do you guys think we would have seen what we saw if he did that? Like, I'm telling you, it wouldn't have taken much for a serious fucking crisis to have occurred in DC. Okay. If he had actually called for an insurrection and said, "We need to seize the Capitol. We're taking our country back. They just stole the election. Blah, blah. People, get to DC. Come here. Let's go." That would have been
wasn't a military coup. So
what he said was march peacefully.
Hold on.
And you'd rather
you know what I'd rather do right now is make a little money. I'm gonna read these super chats that people have paid me good American dollars to read. That's what we're gonna do. And gang, speaking of being paid to do stuff, Progressive Victory does cut me a check, and we got some phone banking opportunities for all of you. Okay, right? So I'm gonna post a link. So if you want to actually matter in this election, you don't care about the back and forth, right, that we're having, and you want to actually do something in this election that matters, here's a good way to do it. We're having phone banking. You can click on this link that I'm going to give you, and you can check it out. I am, again, full disclosure, paid by PV. So that said, let's get to these super chats. Okay. $5 from Artemis Fowl. They picked a method that agrees with them regarding who's going to win, right? Isn't this just confirmation bias by another name? We already know the keys are biased in interpretation. $10 from Audacity. Why did Trump win in 2016? Suffering. Why did he lose in 2020? Complacency. Conservatives have been making moves when and where they can. The general populace is a little upset right now. $10 more from Audacity. January 6th is a non-starter because without trial and conviction, the general perception is it wasn't a big deal as people made it out to be. January 6th only matters to terminally online DGG kids. Thank you for the $10. $20 from Artemis Fowl. The public has had January 6th news shoved down their throat for 3.5 years, and Trump is still leading in the race. Do you think the issue isn't that you just haven't yelled enough about January 6th and that will change the race? ? And finally, $10 from Artemis Fowl. How are we having this conversation when these pearl clutchers, I'm assuming he means don't know there are still 3 ongoing court cases dealing with the outcome of the 2020 election that would be outcome determinative. Thank you for the $10. And with that, right? My opinion here, I think that this election is going to be very, very close. It's not going to be a runaway hit for either side. It's not going to be another 1984 where Reagan took 48 of the 50 states. It's just not, right? You're going to have an election that's going to be on the margins. And when it comes to on the margins decisions, things like January 6th will matter. Might not matter to you, but it does matter to certain people, right? So these little things, and the same with Kamala's gun comments, right? Her comments and her flip-flopping on guns are going to matter to some people. Might not matter to you, but it will matter. The question on everyone's mind should be, which of these has more weight and why? So I'm going to toss it back to you guys. You guys going to keep going.
So I wanted to just make a point about like January. I know that we wanted to get away from it, but I think that numbers here are important to bring up when talking about whether or not people care about January 6th. Because it's one thing to go off of vibes, it's another thing to see. And this is a part where the polling actually does matter. So this was like from CBS News. This is from January 6th of this year, okay? So according to this poll from CBS, 22% of Americans approve and 78% disapprove. When we're looking specifically at Republicans, 20 in today, it seems as though like in January 2021, more people seem to like disapprove of January 6th today than they did when it happened in when it happened in 2021. The only part where this is not true is the fact that aren't as many Republicans who disagree as strongly as they did. So 51% of January 6th said in 2021, 51% said disapproved strongly, 32% today disapprove strongly. But it's shifted to 38% from disapprove somewhat from 28% and 30% from 21% that approve. So it seems to have shifted. We have today, okay, non-MAGA Republicans, 79% of non-MAGA Republicans disapprove of January 6th. And 57% of MAGA Republicans disapprove January 6th today. So all of this seems to me like I'm just very briefly looking at these numbers, and I don't know what actual logical justification, frankly, Pentle, that you have. Just generally looking over this. I think you might be able to say convincingly that most people don't think that Republicans think it's an insurrection. You might be able to say that most people think that Trump shouldn't have gone to jail. You might be able to say that most Republicans think that Democrats trying to prosecute Trump for an insurrection was ridiculous. You might be able to say that, and I believe you if you could find me data. What I don't believe you is that I don't think you can provide me a source that shows that most Republicans approve or don't care about this. I don't think that's true.
I just based that off of conversations I had. I mean, if you go out in the real world and talk to people, not a lot of them care about January 6th. Yeah. Yeah, no, getting off the internet is very important. You should definitely go talk to people.
Where you live, right? But where you live really depends, in on Maryland, what you're going to hear.
Yeah.
Right, but true. In your circles, come on, man.
Can we just say something too? But here's another thing. Like a couple of things too. Like, and this has to do with the terminally online thing. Okay, so a couple things. If you are going to say that something is a terminally online take, and this isn't just for you, Pentle, this is for whoever put that super chat.
I would argue definitely.
Okay, if you are going to say that something is a terminally online take, you need to have some actual numbers or a source in order to prove that. Okay,
you need to actually online response ever.
It's not. It's
only online and
people don't care about January 6th. People don't care. Nobody cares.
You don't have any proof. You have no evidence to support your statement. But secondly, as to what Artemis Fowl said earlier, okay, about like how it's a biased thing. My answer to you is no, it's not. Alan Lichtman correctly predicted the 2000 and when was the last election? 2020 election. He correctly predicted it. He correctly predicted that Trump was going to win. He has made predictions like on behalf of conservatives as well as Democrats, and he has consistently predicted correctly since 1984. If you can find me someone who has been able to make a consistent track record of correct predictions for over 30 years that says that Trump is going to win based off of policy decisions, based off of actual
Didn't you
objective
just
data,
admit
then maybe
that
I'll listen
some
to
of the
you. But
analysis on the keys this year you felt were obviously incorrect? Like no primary challenge, for
no,
example, no
what I
first party challenge when
but
RFK
hang
was
on.
reaching weirdly 10%
I said
in
I think what
polls.
I said I think I said that even though there are some aspects of the keys that I'm not sure I agree with, I trust what Alan Lichtman says
Why do you
because of
care
his
about the
track
keys so
record of
much?
success.
Oh,
I'm
so then
telling you
why do you
why
have the
because of,
election?
I'm telling you why because of its track record of successful predictions. That's why I care about. That's why I value it. Unless you have a metric that you've used that's correctly predicted elections since 1984 that says that Trump is, so you don't. So then why are you sneering at it? You don't have any actual methodology to back up
Because
what
he
you're
talks
saying.
to people.
Okay.
He has anecdotes, my dude.
We're
the virgin
looping.
data
I
versus
speak
Chad
with
anecdotes.
people.
I think we both
yeah.
both stated our case, stated our reasons, and the audience can judge based on those reasons. $10 more
that's a
from
good point.
Audacity to ask how many polled and where. Is there a 13 keys on this we can get? Well, thank you for the $10, Audacity.
Here, is this good data? I do a poll every week. I go out and I hold a sign, and the sign's not here, but it says honk once for Kamala, honk twice for Trump. And this is in Maryland. Is this data meaningful to you?
I would
This is a
rather
poll.
trust the
You have
polls
the
from Maryland,
audacity to
broski.
call other people
You
terminally
and Gallup.
online. This is
Yeah, is this poll
online.
valid to you?
Is
Oh
it
my
the
God,
skip
get a
poll?
better hobby.
Do you skip down the road with it? Is it the skip
No,
poll?
I
Is it the
literally
Gallup
just
poll?
stand
Because
there.
you
I
skip
stand there
down the
with a
lane
sign.
in order to get it. Honk once for Kamala. Honk
Yeah, no, I
twice
do
for
it for
Trump.
YouTube. I do it for
Car
YouTube.
wash
You
to
can see me
raise
there.
funds for his campaign.
I do it on
All
YouTube. You can
goes
see me
to a
there.
charitable organization.
lovely.
You too can help Trump win.
Yeah,
Make
I'm just
sure
asking.
to
And if you
drink
don't,
water
if you
before
don't
go
think it's
stand
good
out
data,
there.
I'm just curious what you think.
Do they
like,
throw
causes
change
people
at
to
you
vote.
out the window after they honk, right?
No.
To donate to Trump's campaign? Is that what they do too?
No, it's just a honk
Do you,
poll.
do,
It's a very
do you
simple poll. I
frisbee
stand on the
MAGA
side of
hats
the
into
road.
You have no
open
And people that want to
demographics of the type
participate
of
can
people that you-
participate,
Okay.
and these are the
Okay.
results. And I'm
Okay.
curious if you have any like actual response to it other than that.
You don't know the
hold on.
demographics.
I want to get us back on
Of
track.
Maryland, that votes like 70% for Democrats, and
Kings
I'm out
and-
here standing
kings
on the
and
side of the road.
queens.
Are the Democrats
Might not
just
be a
shy?
bias
What's the
on who
reason that
might
you would
respond
give
to.
for the mismatch? I'm just curious.
Depends
Like,
on
I
what
mean-
time. What time are you doing it?
Okay,
It
it's
depends
usually
on who
Saturdays
is out.
about noon o'clock.
I'm going to
Yeah.
be real.
Gotcha.
Okay, I'm throwing a flag on the play because I'm no offense, Pentle, but I don't give a shit about your honk poll. I don't.
Wait,
I'm just saying, look, we can
not
pull
interested
data.
in
You guys don't like my poll. I don't know why. It's
$10. What I do
valid
care about
data.
is money,
far
and
as
I
I'm
do care
concerned.
about the next question I have for you. So I'm gonna read the super chat, and then I have a question to maybe get us back on track. A few super chats actually. $5 Canadian, unfortunately, from Testicle Johnson. We still love you, Testicle Johnson. Is okay. Improper use of Horman is a $15 fine. This man has encouraged criminality. Obey the rules. $5 for In Pursuit of Knowledge to say this guy is a perfect example why Trump will lose. Seeing Fairy Queen dunk on this loser is hilarious. And then $10 from Artemis Fowl. Did the two women that don't respect polling and only use confirmation bias as support for their argument now demand this dude give data for his opinions? Delicious irony. Behold my
So
chat.
I was using polling.
Right, behold my chat. But the question, right? The question I have for all of you, okay? Let's take it one at a time. Let's start with Kamala, okay? What is Kamala's strongest thing that if you were her campaign manager, what should she be pushing? What should she be doing today till election day to win? Let's start with Fairy Queen. We'll end with Pentuple.
So what Kamala Harris should push? Well, first of all, the abortion thing, keep pushing that, okay? You should definitely keep promoting that. You should keep talking about it. That is one of the strongest things that Kamala can do. The second thing that you can do, as I said before, you need to fix the Palestine versus Zionist problem, like within the Democratic Party.
Okay, how?
I'm not sure. I don't
Yeah.
claim to know what the... So my real answer is I don't know. I don't know what the solution is, but it's not my job to know what the solution is. It's their job, because if she is elected, and even right now, she's the presumptive head of the Democratic Party. This is something that is going to bite her in the ass. If she does not figure out a way to resolve this issue within the Democratic Party, it could really wind up biting her in the future if she wants to become reelected. Because this is going to be, this is something that people vastly care about, which
Do
is
they?
actually a key.
So what
I mean,
data do you
I don't-
have that's going to be so you asked Pentuple from data. I'm gonna turn it on you, right? Because the data I've seen
I mean-
shows that this doesn't even break the top 15 of issues that people care about, right?
It's not in the top 15, but even though it's not in the top 15, it's an issue that has captured the public eye. Like even at one of Kamala's like rallies, like I think there were a lot of protesters that showed up to that rally specifically to disrupt it because of the discourse about Palestine.
When you say
and
a
it's
lot,
not going to be a problem.
They tend to be very loud.
Yeah, they are loud. They are
And that's-
disruptive. But like when we look at voting, right, which is how we elect things, like again, I'm just asking for the data here on what shows that they're going to actually either A, stay home, or B, vote for Trump, or third party, Jill Stein, whatever, right? Because again, the data I'm looking at doesn't seem to suggest that. In fact, the data I look at, right, when we look at where most Americans fall on Israel-Palestine, being pro-Palestine isn't a winning electoral position.
It's not, and it's not going to be for the majority of American voters. Like the majority of American voters support Israel. The majority of Democrats, like per the party, I think support Israel. Like so, you're right that it's not in the top 15 issues that people care about. But what I think is probably going to happen, I'm not talking about the majority of voters, but some of these voters, okay? Just like with the abortion issue, how there are going to be a wide swath of people who I think are going to be swing voters because they're going to be single issue voters for this particular election. I think that that's also likely going to be true for people who are rabidly pro-Palestine. And I don't think that their response to this is going to be, I'm going to vote for a third party or I'm going to vote for Trump. I think they're just not going to vote at all. I think that they aren't going to go to the voting booth in the first place. And they're probably, and it's not that these people make up a significant margin of like the voting booth, of like the voting polls, right? Most people, Kamala Harris, I think, is still going to win. But I think that as the war rages on, and as like we see more and more pictures and there's more and more destruction, this issue is going to explode and it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And this tiny vocal faction of like the Democratic Party is going to become more and increasingly more unhinged. So this is going to be an issue, I think, I think she will be elected, that she's going to have to figure out like how to resolve and how to heal this schism in some way. And I don't know how that happens, but it has to happen.
Okay, Katya. Same question for you. You're Kamala's manager. What do you do?
Super fast. Can I say something to respond to the Israel-Palestine thing?
By all means.
Okay, so honestly, one thing about that, like, yes, these people are super loud, but one thing about them, a lot of them are not Democratic voters. Like, a lot of the people who are super, super, like, pro-Palestine, I'm not voting, this, that, and the other, a lot of them tend to trend younger. A lot of them never voted before. A lot of them aren't even accounted for in the polls. A lot of them wouldn't have voted otherwise. It's a rhetorical strategy, and a lot of these people do not agree with electoralism as a whole. Like, I mean, as somebody who kind of runs in leftist circles but disagrees strongly with these people, a lot of the time we're going to be looking at people who are just, like, against the system in general and do not care. So that's one thing. Secondarily, if I was Kamala's manager, I would say we need to push the abortion thing, as well as we need to push some of these things as far as like the housing thing, as far as like the like some of the more economic things that have worked in the past, as well as kind of straying away from things like, I would say stray away from the Second Amendment, honestly, because that's just, right now it's not even in the forefront, but it does cause controversy once it's brought up, and doubt anything's really going to change with that. But that, as well as just, kind of continue with the appearances that she's doing, and like, the just being, I guess, more jovial.
Pentle. You're Kamala's manager.
If I was Kamala's manager, all right, let me really get into this mindset. I think, and this kind of goes into why I think she's working so far from behind. I think the visibility, like I said at the beginning, is the most important thing. I think she's working with simply not enough time. She's running a general election campaign with 3 months. I would say what she needs to do is compensate for that missed time. And that's going to make, 30-minute speeches is not
when
enough.
She gets up, hold on, the question, when she gets up in front of those cameras, when she is more visible, what do you think she needs to tell the public? Right. What does she need to do?
Anything. She just needs to be up there, I would say. And I don't think she's been up there enough.
So
I think she's doing the very, like, few moments. She wants to get the good clips. I don't think that the answer is to just go out and try to get 3 or 4 good clips between now and November. I think she just needs to go out there and be visible and be real and come off genuine and take field questions from not just, reporters and not just edited interviews. I think she needs to go out for longer than 30 minutes. I mean, the amount of watch time that Trump gets when he goes out and speaks for 2 hours, and then he does these, interviews with like the journalist convention in Chicago that I mentioned, and he does the one the other night, the town hall. All of that time spent, that visibility is probably more valuable in a way than whatever is actually being said. Because like we said, both of these people have been in positions of power. There's not a lot of people that are necessarily looking at the other side, but they're looking at their own side to see if they're going to come out for them. So I would think Kamala just needs to be out there. She just needs to be doing more. And that's one of the reasons I think she's losing, is because she's not doing that. So that's I would just say be visible. Her positions are her positions. We know what they are for the most part. You know what I mean? It's the same things that she's going to say. It's the same with Trump. There's a lot of overlap in the speeches. He talks about the same issues and the same problems and, whatever. So I don't think she's going to get away with just having like one, clip of her saying something. She needs to be out there saying it over and over and be visible and talk to the people. That's what I would say.
Portland, same question.
So I think it is important for Kamala to get her economic incentives into the spotlight more. I think people really respond to incentives to start your own business, incentives to start your own family, incentives to buy your own home. I think those are good, simplistic policies that are easily digestible by the majority of Americans, and that they really point to her strong policy platform positions that people can really get behind. I think she needs to do more to associate herself with the successes of the Biden administration, things like the infrastructure bill and the CHIPS Act, and distance herself from things like the border and the pullout in Afghanistan effectively, but to try to avoid those topics as much as possible. I don't necessarily know that like more and more comprehensive exposure is actually a good strategy for her at this point, because I think that the reason that people are able to turn out in droves to these Trump rallies and stuff is because they are a little bit more like a carefree rock concert kind of atmosphere that doesn't give a shit about policy. Democrats need to play to their policy strengths to really appeal to their voters. And honestly, her policy platform, it's a little lacking in some areas with respect to things like the border, things like the Israel-Palestine conflict. I think the best thing that she can possibly do is hit those simple, strong notes, the economic incentives, and get in front of people in a controlled fashion that really allows her to cater to that message without opening herself up to a level of scrutiny that she's maybe not prepared for. And that's unfortunate to say about a presidential candidate. I'm not particularly enthusiastic about her as a candidate. I think that any amount of additional exposure is going to change that.
Okay. Well, now you've defected, gang, okay? And you've switched sides, and now you're Trump's campaign manager. Fairy Queen, you have been appointed. You've woken up. Trump gives you that call. You accept. I need you to fix my campaign. I need you to get me past the finish line. I need you to get me elected. How do you do that? What do you want Trump to do? What does Trump need to do in order to get elected? What would you have him do?
So, if I was Trump's campaign manager, I would tell him two things. For one, continue hitting immigration and continue hitting the economy. The economy is something I think that a lot of people care about. There's a reason why on the debate stage, and it's not just because of the question, why Kamala Harris constantly hit that point over and over again. And I think that those 2 points are going to be the strongest arguments in favor of voting for Trump. I think it's going to be immigration, and I think it's probably going to be the economy. So keep hitting that and focus on that. Secondly, okay, the abortion thing matters. It's not just a single thing. It's not just something you can hand wave away. So this is putting on our hats, okay? If the answer is truly no, if that is actually true, that if a national abortion ban was attempted and was passed, in the House and the Senate, and it reached the president's desk, if it's actually true that you wouldn't sign it, you should come out and very clearly and make a public statement saying, no, I would not sign it. You don't talk about J.D. Vance. Don't talk about the states. Don't talk about how the overturning of Roe v. Wade turned it back. Don't do that. Do not mess around. Clearly state, I would not sign this ban. That's what I would do. But if the answer is yes, I might be convinced to sign it. then I would continue doing exactly what he's doing right now, which is to be very shifty about it, have your vice president say everything, the most extreme things, so that you can appear more moderate in comparison, and continue be extremely vocal about how you support IVF, how it's in the hands of the states. If the answer is yes. If the answer is no, say that it's no. If the answer is yes, continue doing as you have been doing, which is why, frankly, I think the answer to that is a yes. So that's what I would say.
Katya, you again, you wake up, you are now, right? You are now the Trump campaign manager, but you want him to win, right? You're gonna get all the wishes you want, okay?
Yeah,
No
What do you-
I want to
sabotage.
get paid.
No
I want to get
sabotage.
paid, bro.
Yeah, exactly. What do you tell him to do to get over that finish line?
Basically, as Fairy Queen just said, with the two issues with the economy, and then basically with immigration. Continue just saying random shit, because clearly that works for him very well. Be funny, that works for him very well. That's kind of why a lot of people go out for him. It's not like a lot of his policies are fantastic, so people just have to keep stuff that sounds good, stuff that looks good, stuff that makes people feel like they've got a strong man in front of them and behind them and all that.
Okay. Pentle.
I'd give the same answer as before, generally speaking, just to take all the interviews you can get, do all the appearances that you can get as much watch time out there as possible. Maybe stop golfing out in the open when they're trying to kill you every other week. So maybe some more bulletproof glass I would recommend for him. And actually, ironically, I actually didn't agree with this decision at first. I wanted to see a second debate. But I actually might recommend him not doing a second debate, and this is the only reason. The movement for him isn't as dramatic as it is for Kamala, because so many people are sort of new with Kamala and looking to her to see if that she can attract their vote. She probably got, let's just say, I don't know what the number is, 100 million impressions from her clips on the debate, right? Between the viewership and the stuff getting out. That was a huge opportunity for her to get in front of voters. And like I said, she's not really been strong on that herself. So she's going all in on these very few appearances. If I was Trump's campaign manager, I would say, go out, do interviews, get in front of the people on your own. And by not giving her a second debate, she's going to have to compensate for that lack of attention in her own way by going out and doing the same. And that might actually bait her into some, performances that don't actually have a net positive for her, because she might not be as popular as I think you might think she is, when she is sort of hidden as a candidate. Which is why I think her team understands right now that they don't need to just be putting her out there. They need to be very, very careful with the situations that they put her in. I don't think that bodes well for a presidential candidate, to put it that way. But if I was Trump's campaign manager, I would say, don't do a second debate. Just get out there, be as visible as you can, all on your own, and run the race and don't look back.
And last but certainly not least on this question, okay, Portland is burning. You've been hired. They've called you up. You've accepted the challenge. Trump 2024, you are in charge of making it happen. What do you do?
Okay, I'm going to say something really quick while he's gone. Nobody repeat it when he gets back. I agree with Pentle, at least about the debate strategy. I think debate plays to Trump's strengths and deprives Kamala of the opportunity to show the juxtaposition like she did with the last debate. She came off more measured, more coherent. Trump had some embarrassing moments like the cats and dogs comment and the concepts of a plan comment. I think that getting
the illegal
away
transgender
from
aliens.
That was a banger. Oh my God. I would love nothing more than to see them debate every day now through election day. It wouldn't even
just on illegal transgender alien getting surgery.
That was the case.
Let him finish his point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let him finish his point.
He needs to play to his strengths, keep playing the hits, rally, interview, do the the fraternal order of police bullshit, and get rid of Laura Loomer. For God's sake, just get her out of the spotlight, get her out of the news, get her out of your general proximity. It's not good for anybody, and it creates this level of curiosity that I think invites people to look further into her, and she's a shit show of a person, both politically and personally. I think that the more distance you can create between Trump and Laura Loomer, the better. The fewer debates, the better, and more rallies, more greatest hits, more stuff about how we hate immigrants and we love the economy.
Okay, $5 from the Trib 1. It's cute that bottom right thinks exposure helps Trump. He is losing endorsements and musicians, LOL. left and right, the more he speaks. Elon also. Thank you for the $5. The question I have, I guess it's related to all this, right? Because a lot of people have said that they're tired of hearing why they shouldn't vote for the other candidate, right? They want a reason to vote for their candidate. However, negative campaigning seems to work. So which would you want to see your candidate? So now you get to choose the candidate that you want to win, right? The candidate you want to see actually win. Do you think that they should be more positive or they should go more negative? And why do you think so? So we'll start with Pentle, and then I want to hear from the rest of you. So Trump, do you think he should just go Kamala, Kamala, right? Do you think he should
I mean, I
go
think
on
it's
that,
fair.
or-
I think it's fair campaigning, and you're not going to see like just kumbaya campaigning anytime soon. But I do prefer when he takes the Trump focused approach. I like when he talks about Agenda 47 and the plans that he actually has. Kamala is often attacking him with Project 2025, knowing full well that he has a completely separate agenda, which is called Agenda 47. If anyone out there wants to look it up, if you go to his website, you can find it. You can't find anything on her website.
Yeah, you can.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Did they
she has her
recently added? You go to Kamala
platform.
Harris. Well, okay,
Yeah,
so they
you just
recently
have to
finally
click
added
on
it.
platforms. Yeah, it's
Do
been there
they?
since like before the debate. Yeah.
No, it hasn't. I have video recordings of me going to this website, so you won't gaslight me. But anyways,
Well, since
I
right
think
before the debate.
Sure. Okay. So I think that probably just the repurposed Democrat platform anyway. I think that he needs to focus on Agenda 47 and his promises. And as far as like campaigning against the other person, I think that's probably something that Kamala has to do from where she's at. I don't think Trump needs to.
Pentle, do you think that his comments on saying that, regardless of whether you agree with him or not, right? That Trump's comments that Kamala is a Marxist, that she's responsible for the assassination attempts against him. Do you think that plays well with voters, or do you think voters are tired of it?
Most voters probably don't hear those comments. I pay pretty close attention. I'm not exactly sure what. I mean, I believe that those comments were made.
It was on the debate.
I think like that's
right. Both of those comments were from the debate.
Sure.
Yeah. So a lot of people heard them.
Right. So what are you exactly asking me?
So I'm asking you, does that kind of attack, right? Does that play well with
that she's a Marxist,
or do you think that
so.
he should tone it down? Like I'd ask I'd ask a similar thing for the Kamala.
Well, how do you interpret her comments when she says stuff like it's not about equality, it's about equity. We don't all end up in the same place. We need to end up in the same place. Those kind of comments where she's talking about that. I mean, does that come off like a little like in that sort of sphere at least? Is there like any sort of way I can draw this tangent for you? Like when she's talking about we don't all start in the same place, we're all trying to end up in the same place. That's why I don't believe in equality. I believe in equity.
Sure, but you understand
that sounds like pretty.
Hold on real quick. So if you understand there's a difference between saying, hey, she has some policies that we think are Marxist in nature, right? But there's a difference between that and then she's a Marxist that's going to take all your guns. And she's responsible for assassination attempts on my life. There's a substantive difference.
I don't know they're responsible for assassination attempts, but I do think. Do you think that she would support an assault weapons ban on the national level? Do you not think she would do that?
I think she would.
Well, then there it is, right?
Okay, but does that make you Marxist? I don't think so. I think you need more.
I mean, it certainly doesn't make you a constitutionalist.
There's plenty of Marxists actually that are pretty pro-gun.
But
whether it's Marxist or not, it certainly isn't American.
Have we read Marx? Because he said the opposite. But all right.
But I want to ask the Kamala supporters here, right? A similar thing, because Kamala has been very negative towards Trump, saying that he's a threat to the Constitution, that he's a threat to democracy, that he is someone that is a danger. Now, regardless of whether you believe that or not, whether you agree with that or not, do you think that resonates with the average voter, or does the average voter get turned off by that kind of rhetoric? What do we think?
I think that I'm basing this
Again,
off
I'm not
of
asking if you agree or not. Okay, that's not whether it's true or not doesn't matter to the question.
I think, as I stated before, I think that like abortion is a single voter issue, but I think a lot of voters are going to turn out and they're going to be single issue voters. And so I think, I'm sorry, I forgot the question you asked me. I was in the middle of answering
being negative towards Trump. So
negative.
for example,
Oh, yeah,
to
exactly.
bring this into, if I may, to bring this into kind of like breaking news, right? Mark Robinson, the governor for North Carolina, or the nominee, the GOP nominee for governor for North Carolina, has recently been caught making some statements such as, I like watching T-slur on girl porn. That's effing hot. He said, I'm a black Nazi. He said slavery is not bad. Some people need to be slaves. I wish they would bring it.
Said he would own
Slavery
some.
back. I would
He would buy-
certainly buy a
Jesus
few.
Christ.
There's a ton, okay? Do you think that Kamala should hit Trump with this over and over and over again and tie it to Trump? Or do you think she should take the high road and just let that be, right? Let her constituents take care of that. And then, right, then just kind of stick with the issue.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I've been forgetting things lately. So my answer is it's a little bit of both. So on the one hand, I think that hitting the abortion, like the risk of like losing an access to your bodily autonomy, I think that hitting that as a policy issue is really important. And I think that like when Kamala does this, I think that like it's very, very strong when she does that. And like if she's going to talk about Trump as a threat, she should talk about January 6th. She should talk about abortion. If she can work it to her favor, she should talk about foreign policy. Those are the things that I think she should focus on. If we're talking about negative campaigning, like reflecting negatively on Trump, what she should not do is what Trump did during the debate. So like all of the things you just mentioned, like the black knots, I don't even want to repeat most of like what you just said, but I think for Kamala to take all of those comments and all of the things that governor said and to use that as negative campaigning, I think that specifically, that type of a negative campaigning, I think that would work badly for Kamala. Because right now, the way that she appeared, at least to me on that stage, was Trump is talking about, immigrants eating dogs and transgender operations in prisons and all sorts of things, right? Even if you voter, okay, agree and think that those things are happening, the majority of people when they watched that debate didn't think that he won, and because he sounded crazy. He sounded insane. And that's the problem with like doing this type of thing, Wick. I think if Kamala were to do the same thing to Trump, she would sound crazy, because doesn't it sound crazy? Like just even if it's true, even if like you have logs for these things, like everything that you just said just sounds so unhinged. But if I was a deeply Republican voter, my knee-jerk reaction would be to disregard that and to dismiss it and to say, well, you're just saying that because you hate Trump. No, if you're going to criticize and speak negatively about Trump, I think really sticking to the policies and sticking to things
stick to the policies.
Stick to policies and stick to January 6th and to things that he actually did, that he did in office. Don't talk about things that like sound crazy to say. Like if you do that, that's the bad idea.
Kata in Portland, what do you think?
I think that what like basically she would have to, or they would have to focus on, is basically just like focusing on kind of on one side positivity towards obviously what she's doing and like how she's going to make things better for people, because that's what people really want to hear, is that a politician's going to help them with issues that they have, as well as as we've said, talking about January 6th and talking about things that people might lose, like access to abortion, access to healthcare, Social Security, Medicare, things that you might lose under Trump, right? Because especially older voters who roll out in droves to vote, they need their Social Security. I work in an industry that is mostly older people, and I talk to older people all the time, and so many of them are requiring that check at the end of the month to live. So if we really harp on, yeah, you might lose that money, or you might get your stuff cut, or we might raise the age of retirement, a lot of those people are going to be like, wait a minute.
Portland.
I tend to agree that I tend to feel that like negative campaigning hurts the hurts the chances of Kamala getting elected, because we've heard it all before. We've heard it 100 times over, and I'm not convinced that anything really substantive has changed since the since the January 6th reports, the commission reports came out. So I'm deeply confident that people have already largely chosen a side that are ideologically invested enough to actually understand and research those issues. I think that rather than campaigning on what the other candidate is going to do to me, campaign on what you're going to do for me. And that speaks again to like some of the positive economic policies that are geared towards helping revitalize the middle class. I think that there's a lot of meat on the bones there and very little uncharted territory in terms of things that you can say about Trump that we don't already know.
Okay. Well, I think we've kind of covered our bases here. This has been a interesting stream, right? We got some great hypothetical questions out of it, right? Which would you rather have? January 6th for every election or one more school shooting? Something to ponder. Let me ask
No,
you.
it's
I feel like
not.
there's an
It's
easy
not.
answer.
Well, there's one
I
of
feel
those
like
that we
there's
know
an
is
easy
going to
answer.
happen. It's the U.S. Come
One of
on.
them is a lot of kids dying, and the other one is
Which kids, though?
people
That
One
walking
of
through the
those is for
Capitol.
sure going to happen. One of those we can avoid.
Are the kids brats?
Wow, I'm
Like,
surprised you wanted to double down on that awful
Are they? Do they
take.
cry a lot?
Yeah, I'll
right?
quadruple down.
And do they throw fits in like Walmart and stuff like that when I'm in line trying to get my groceries? That matters. But anyway, regardless, I want to give each of these people a chance to have closing thoughts, closing arguments for why they feel what they do, and why they're voting. If you want, you don't have to, but why you are voting, how you're voting, if you are planning to vote. And I have links to all their stuff in the description on my YouTube. Please, please, please give all these wonderful people a follow, right? If you agree with them or not, right? They've taken the time to come on my show and give you and I both content. So please, thank you for the bits, Feder Methodist. Really appreciate you. Okay, we're going to start with Pentle, and we're going to end with Fairy Queen. Pentle?
So I'll end off with vote for Trump. He's the people's champ, the only one actually democratically elected to the general election position. Follow me on YouTube. You can see me. I go out every weekend and we get poll numbers. This is the most legit poll. It's the only poll I trust. I don't trust any other poll ever. No polls. Check me out on YouTube. Check me out on X, and I stream on Twitch. And again, thanks for having me, Wick. I had a lot of fun, and it was really nice to meet you guys. I had fun. Fairy Queen, Katya, and Portland is burning. It was fun. I know we had a little fun. Katya.
Check him out, gang. And
I mean, you know what? Debate is fun.
It is fun. It is fun. And I liked hearing what you guys had to say. So sincerely, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Portland is burning. Close us out.
I enjoyed the spirited nature of this conversation, even though at several points I began to question my place in the universe and wonder deeply why I was doing this to myself. Thank you guys for joining in this conversation. And Pent, you seem like a nice enough guy, even though, God, I can't imagine we agree on pretty much anything. I would have a beer with you and yell at you anytime, assuming you have the free time on the weekends. It sounds like you're really busy soliciting horns on the street, which, do what you want with your free time. That's your business. This is America.
It's fun.
Everybody, like the stream, subscribe to Wick, give everybody else here a follow. Don't bother following me. I really only pop in every once in a while to talk shit about people that aren't in the room. And if there's anything else that you need my opinion for, just let me know. I'm always available. Nice to see you guys. Fairy Queen, Katya, nice to see you guys both. I'm pretty sure that I've been on at least one stream with Katya before, or you just look really familiar. Fairy Queen, we've talked plenty of times. So you guys have a rest of your evening, and pleasure talking to you.
Portland, always a pleasure having you on. Thank you. Please check him out if you want. Katyusha, please.
Yep, as I said before, I'm Katusha. You can find me on X/Twitter at Premier Katya. And basically follow me for Star Trek memes and I guess sociopathic January 6 takes. I don't know. It was really fun talking to these people. If any of y'all want to talk again or debate or whatever, hit me up. Yep. Have a great rest of your evening, all.
We will. Thank you. And finally, last but not least, Fairy Queen.
Hey, everybody. So, first of all, you can find me at It's Me Fairy Queen on Twitter, on YouTube, on Twitch, and you can find me at It Me Fairy Queen on Twitter. So please give me a follow. Please subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. Your support is really helpful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm going to end tonight's stream, and I'm not going to talk about who I think is going to win because that's how I started. I'm going to tell you who I'm tentatively going to tell you who I think I'm going to vote for, who I want to vote for. Well, my plan is for voting. And I don't say this lightly. I was not sold on Kamala Harris, okay? Just to be very, very clear. I really teetered between Trump and between Kamala for a while. But here's my decision, and here's what I think, okay? If you're like me, and you are somebody who is a woman, and if you are a centristy woman, or if you're moderately conservative, okay, I am in the boat with you, okay? And I understand like why you would have some hesitations at voting for Kamala. I've had many of those hesitations myself. For me personally, I say and have told people before that I'm a wannabe radical feminist. And that means that I am critical of a lot of issues that the Democrat Party pushes, in particular trans issues. And I am extremely worried about the impact that will have on women's rights like in the next 20 years. My concern is primarily that the short term of electing Democrats and of the Democrats seizing power in the White House is that the short term gain of protecting abortion and protecting women's right to choose, of protecting welfare programs, of protecting the community will come at the long term cost of women's rights being destroyed and thrown into the garbage. That's my concern. And so I think that a lot of women right now are in this sort of in between space where you're not sure which party is actually going to be on your side and which rights you're willing to give away more. So my answer to this is to split the ticket and to split the difference. To vote for Kamala Harris into presidency, to defend and to protect women's right to an abortion, to make sure that if, for instance, somebody ever did suggest for a national abortion ban to be passed, that we know for certain that it will not be passed and that she will sign no. That's too important of an issue to simply hand wave away because there are other things going on. It's too important. It matters too much in the now. And I think that that is actually my biggest reason for why I'm choosing to vote for her. But at the same time, I agree with a lot of the criticisms that have been made of Kamala. I don't think that she's a shoo-in. And so to prevent any policy changes that might negatively impact women or negatively impact our communities, I think that we should vote for Republican senators and for Republican House of Representatives. And in that way, the consequence of that will be twofold. That way we make sure that there is a restriction on what types of policies are presented. We know for that, and so it will create a situation where the Democrats won't be able to push forward any legislation that might actually hurt or injure our communities. But it will also mean that the Republicans won't be able to pass any if they suggest anything that would be equally harmful. And so I beg all of you, okay, that if you are thinking about what to do on the ballot, that you consider gridlock as your strategy. Think the person that you want at the desk is the person that's going to protect your right to choose. The person that you want as your senator or as your House representative is the person that's going to protect your domestic violence shelters, your locker rooms, your ability to have access to a same-sex care physician. This is the best way, I think, to really make sure that our rights and the rights of our future are protected in the best way possible. Okay. So that's what I would recommend everyone else do.
You just angered every single person that watches my stream in different ways. Fairy Queen, we love you. Thanks for coming. Gang.
Actually.
Two last things. One, I'll reiterate, I am getting a check from Progressive Victory. We are having phone banking. Please sign up. I will once again, provide you that link in my channel. Please, please, please sign that up. And even if you can only do 1 or 2 slots, that would really help us out. And it's a lot more helpful than tweeting about it, right? So put your money where your mouth is, and let's get some shit done. So I'll provide those links. But the second thing, and this is the Fairy Queen, okay? Let me give you an example of a quote, okay, from one of those Republican GOP senators, House of Representatives, that's going to protect your rights. And this is from Mark Robinson. I am currently having an affair with my wife's sister. And this is a quote from him. And I just needed a place to say out loud that she has the best smelling, best tasting, P-word, an asshole in the universe.
What state? What
So,
state is this guy
North
from?
Carolina.
North
North Carolina.
South.
So I
why
hope
did I
you
know
all,
it was gonna be
right,
somewhere down there?
keep that in mind.
Real quick.
What's your
Real quick. On Mark Robinson today, if I could quote someone else, Donald Trump, Mark Robinson is Martin Luther King on steroids. He is better than Martin Luther King. So,
There you go.
I mean, what the fuck are we even doing?
I don't know what we're doing, but who
Is
are
that
we
a
rating
joke about
into?
sex scandals?
Okay, let's find out. Let's go to
the real winner, I guess, is
rate
the
Prime Time.
sister, maybe? I don't know. She's the only one who got complimented here, except I guess he did. I don't know.
The real winners here are us in the audience because this panel is over.
Oh my god.
True.
Come on, it wasn't that bad. It was pretty
That
fun.
was awesome.
But anyway, I'll see you guys tomorrow. So tomorrow, actually, we're gonna be talking about the Rick Lowry, I believe is his name.
Oh God.
He may or may not have said the N-word. But we're going to have Lethy Waterkai and Ed O'Quinn on, 2 people with the pass. I've checked, okay, to discuss what should be done when people may or may not have said the N-word. I don't know. We're gonna find out.
Oh man.
Gang. Oh,
This
you know,
fucking poor
did
guy.
you guys know this is a preview? You know, I said the N-word once when I was in 5th grade. I got tricked into it. This is a true story. I got tricked into
You're
it by
reading
my teacher.
Huckleberry Finn.
Here, this is how it happened, okay? So I was in 5th grade and we were learning about racism, okay? And the teacher asked us, "Hey, what's the worst slur that you know? What's the worst racial epithet
And you were like,
you know?"
Dumb
I
teacher.
knew the answer. I told the answer, and she sent me to the principal's office. I felt
mean,
tricked. I felt tricked.
Yeah.
That is
I'll
this.
see-
That is this episode.
I'll see you guys later.
I mean,
bye-bye. See ya.
absolutely.
Same thing happens to me every week.